Hi, this is Drew Tignanelli. This is our September update here with Michael P. McCarthy and two special guests. Who do we have
Some
today?
special guests. What's your name? And you?
Denver.
And what's special about today?
Today's my birthday.
So for your birthday, your father took you on to his market update. So that we can talk about a special planning topic today.
Yeah.
Financial planning around for kids. Does that sound interesting?
Yeah. No. No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, we won't make you guys suffer through it,
What
but
do you think the stock market's going to do next year?
stock market predictions? No? Okay. We're not supposed to do those anyway.
I mean, hey,
Today we will be talking about financial planning, especially around having children or having kids. And so I'm glad you guys could join me, but I'll let you guys go ahead with your mom, okay? All right,
Yeah.
Goodbye. I'll see you guys when I get
Happy
home.
birthday, Kerrigan. All right. So markets are still up and holding on, but September's coming, Mike. September has a history of being one of the worst months of the year. It is the worst month of the year historically.
Yep, that can happen. Markets are up for the month, but they're still off their July highs. A lot of what's being talked about right now is still the same topic, the Federal Reserve and what they're going to do. Futures markets. So Jerome Powell came out in the past week and kind of gave softer language around the future of interest rates and the idea of rate cuts, though, we've been speculating about this for 2 years. So it's anybody's guess what actually happens. The future markets are saying that they see rates reducing each quarter. And again, looking at the futures markets where people are betting their money on what the future of interest rates will be, it looks like they're predicting that by the end of 2025, markets rates will be around 4.25.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that stock markets, usually when there's an anticipation of something, markets have already discounted it, and then it actually happens, and everyone expects it to be positive, and the market turns around and goes down on the news, because that's how markets work. They think way ahead of what's actually happening, and that's why most people can't appreciate why markets do what they do.
Right, and Chris O'Shea, our chief investment officer, he was pointing out that even at 4.25, that is still considered quantitative tightening versus quantitative easing. So that still puts us in a place where the Federal Reserve is restricting the economy versus pushing it forward.
Yeah, you need a normal yield curve where short-term rates are much lower than long-term rates, because that's how banks make their money. They get money from you and I into checking accounts and saving accounts and CDs, and then they lend it out for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. And the spread between the two is how they make their money. Well, it doesn't work very well if the short-term rate is 5 and the long-term rate is 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Fed is also allowing its bonds to mature. So what that means is that during the course of the year, the Fed has gone out and bought bonds, which is putting money into the economy. Well, now that those bonds mature and they don't buy new bonds, that's pulling money back out of the economy. So yeah, a lot of tightening.
Yeah, well, that's how the Fed influences the money supply of the country, is they either sell bonds and move cash into the economy, or they buy bonds they sell bonds and take money out of the economy. They buy bonds and put money back into the economy. And for quite a few years now, they've been quantitative tightening, like you call it. They've been buying bonds, taking money out of the economy, but they had to do that. They overflooded the economy with money after COVID-19. But now we're at a place where they've taken plenty of money out of the economy. It's time to start getting back to normal. But I don't want to talk about the Federal Reserve because they just frustrate me.
Sounds good.
And that's a good reason to move on to your kids' topic, right?
Yes. So I'm glad to have Kerrigan and Devin to help us introduce the topic of what are all the many things that you need to think about when you're a parent with kids around your financial planning. So
we're only going to talk about a few of them. There's hundreds of them, but we're going to hit the big ones. So go ahead. What do you got?
One of the first big ones is both Kerrigan and Devon, within a month of their birth, got a 529 account. And 529 accounts were attractive back then, but they're even more attractive now. So 529, depending on what state you're in, is an account that you can, for Maryland, you can put 2,500 per beneficiary, per parent, or per owner per year. And you can even make a large gift and take it over 10 years. But it can't be more than what that limit is. But the really cool thing, go ahead.
You're just talking the tax deduction in Maryland.
The
You
tax,
could technically put $400,000 into a 529 in one fell swoop if you wanted to.
you could, but you'd lose most of your tax deduction.
Well, yeah, but that's what you're pointing out is that $5,000 for a married couple to get a 529 tax deduction. And that's in Maryland. Every state's different. In Pennsylvania, you can get up to $18,000 per beneficiary deduction. And you can use any 529 plan in the country in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Maryland, you have to use the Maryland plan, right?
Yeah. We could probably do a whole show on 529s, but the one other aspect I really wanted to hit is the fact that there's a new change. And the new change is that now, let's say you get that money in there and your children don't need it. Either they get scholarships or they just don't use all the money. Up to 35,000 can be converted into a Roth IRA, which is just another incredible planning opportunity. There's rules around it. You can only convert as much as you would be eligible to put into a Roth for the year. But that's just another one of those things that has just made it all the more beneficial and interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt that helped a lot, because I was always concerned about people who might overfund a 529. Now we've got a little bit of a outlet for some of that excess money if it happens.
Right.
So what else? Estate planning. What do we do there?
Well, the most important thing is some people are young and walking through life, not really thinking about, death. But once you have kids, it's a really important responsibility that you get your estate plan in order, that you have your will and your power of attorney and your advance directives, because one of the things you'll need to do is appoint guardians for someone if you and your spouse are no longer there, who's going to take care of the kids. And then the other thing you got to think about is, well, what if they're still young when you pass away? Who's going to handle the money for them?
Yeah, and statistically, it's unlikely to happen that the mother and father would pass away, but it does happen. One simple little document can deal with all those issues very easily. Last thing you want, Mike, is for, God forbid something like that to happen, is for your family, lots of different factions of your family coming in saying, well, we'd be the best people. We'd be the best people. If you don't have anything to say who Mike and Holly want to care for the kids, the judge is going to make that decision. He's going to choose Uncle Harry, the last person on earth you would want to raise your kids. Not that you have an Uncle Harry, but
I don't have any Uncle Harrys. I had an Uncle Buck, which was good, which was more than enough. So before we leave estate planning, one of the documents that Drew has been a huge proponent of that a lot of people just don't think about is temporary guardianship. If you and your spouse are going to go away for a little vacation or even a weekend, if something happens medically with your child and the adult that is with them doesn't have that document, there could be a delay in providing medical care. So that is very important. And normally, most estate attorneys just throw it in with the estate, planning paperwork, but you may have to ask for it versus expect them.
You normally have to ask them to do it. They normally don't just give it. But yeah, that's critical. Doctors will only provide life-sustaining treatment to a child if you're not the guardian to give permission to do anything more. And it's a critical document. If you're going to be with your grandchildren, let's say for more than 24 hours, and the parents aren't going to be anywhere near, and you don't know if they're going to answer a cell phone, you want that document, and you want their medical card too, Mike. So
yeah,
those estate planning documents are important. Also, when you choose your guardian for the child, you want to choose a different person as the custodian for the money, Mike. So you got a separation of power. I've seen some pretty funky things in my career where the guardian of the child is also the guardian of the money, and the decisions they make for that child of yours isn't always the best in the child's interest, but there's nobody watching. So what the
Right.
heck?
Well, actually, that's a great segue into, I think, one of the last areas of estate planning we need to cover for having kids, which is how you title your beneficiaries. So there's, kind of two main tracks. If you've been to the estate attorney, you'll probably have created a trust. So, that may be how things get titled. But if you haven't been to the estate attorney, or you didn't, have a trust written into your will, there is language called the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act, UTMA, that will allow you to essentially, without doing any additional paperwork, say, hey, if I, kick the bucket and my son is going to get this money, I want Uncle Harry to be the custodian of it until he's 21 years old, and then he can have it himself. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, the trust creates extra costs today, and if the kids, it creates costs at time if it ever comes into existence. A uniform transfer to minor doesn't cost anything to add it to the document. It doesn't cost anything to administer it. But the negative is the kids get the money immediately at 21. But it may be better to do that. Statistically, it's unlikely to happen than to do nothing at all, right?
Correct. So, hey, and since we're talking about death, that's a perfect
Keep it going.
segue into life insurance. Anybody who's listened to our radio show or the many other videos we've created knows that we have a very specific viewpoint on life insurance. You should only insure for a very specific risk you have. It shouldn't necessarily, in many cases, it should not necessarily just be part of an investment scheme. So most parents will find that if they're younger and they're healthy, they can get pretty affordable term life insurance. 20-year term is very common. And again, when you're trying to figure out how much life insurance should you purchase, you think about, well, what is the risk? So if I pass away, I'm the breadwinner, the provider in my family. So I'm going to need, my wife is going to need a lot of insurance. If she passes away, I'm still going to need help because I'm going to have extra childcare and things of that nature. So when you're making that decision, don't just select $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is. Really think out what your needs are and when your needs might go away. 20 years from now, hopefully we've saved enough money that if something happened to me, my family would still be okay.
Well, and your kids are already through college, probably. Your
Right.
mortgage is paid down a good bit. You're more secure in your Social Security income that you'd have. But also that 20-year term policy is important because a lot of people will go for 30-year term, but and I can't explain the whole thing to everyone right now, but there's a significant difference when you say 20-year term versus 30-year term. The way that policy's calculated, the cost for 30-year is substantially more expensive than 20-year. Whereas 10 and 20 years are not too far apart. But once you go out to 30 years, the way that they force them to calculate the reserves and so very expensive. I'd stay away from 30-year term if I don't need to go that far. Anyway, what other things do we have?
Well, there's one of the things that I did for my kids is when they were really, really young and they wouldn't even remember if they got a birthday present or a Christmas gift from their grandparents because they were just too young to know it. We opened up custodial accounts and let grandparents and aunts and uncles and anybody who said, hey, I want to give them a gift, but they don't, if you guys don't need any more toys, you don't need any more stuff and they're not going to remember it, why not make a contribution? So custodial accounts can be a good fit. And then the American Opportunity Tax Credit. There's many tax credits when it comes to doing with kids, but a lot of them, it's just going to be you get it, you don't get it. With the AMOTC, there is for a married couple a range of 160 to 180,000 of income that staying below that gets you this $2,500 credit as long as you've spent a certain amount on childcare. So when you get to the stage where you're paying for childcare so that you can work, it's good to do that kind of analysis before the end of the tax year to see if there's something you can do, change it a little bit this way, a little bit that way to stay under those limits. But there's one more child planning activity that I didn't put in the outline for you, Drew. So this is for our clients that might have business. And sorry, a little problem with audio.
Or they have little entrepreneurs that they are raising, you know,
Yep,
industrial little kids that got a lemonade stand and they're making some good money on it, or they went and got a job at Chick-fil-A or something and they make some good money at it, or you have a business and you could pay the kid to work for you. You set up a custodial Roth IRA account. Now the child has to have earned income. So there's got to be a tax return that the child has showing they have earned income. But if they make under $7,000 or less, they can do a Roth IRA. And there's nothing more powerful than a 12-year-old with a $5,000 W-2 putting that money into a Roth IRA for 60 years, Mike.
Yeah.
60 years. Think about that. That
And
money.
yeah, and one of the ways that some of our clients in the past have done it is they've actually had their children become involved in marketing efforts, and then they can pay them for the use of their likeness, which is my way of subtly letting you know, Drew, that Kerrigan and Devin do plan to send an invoice.
There you go. I don't blame them, you know. They can feel free to send a 1099. I mean, an invoice in, and we'll give them some money for their appearance today, you know. And they can have their own little Roth IRAs they could set up now.
Yeah. And then we can't let our audience go without letting them know that this month the webinar is going to be Investing for Retirement. And that is with Alec and Roger on our team. And then the article this month is Protecting Your Wealth, Long-Term Care. So look for those in the coming month.
Well, actually, on Friday, Alec and I are doing a long-term care webinar, right?
I think we announced that in the last month's video.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't even remember, you know?
Yeah.
It just shows, I hope I'm there consciously to be able to do the presentation on Friday, because I can't even remember that we announced it last month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saying in September webinar. That's what
September
that's
webinar, because by the time this comes
still
out,
doing
that'll
the
be over.
August webinar
Yeah.
on Friday, because it's August 30th.
And if
All right,
you're
Mike.
seeing this video, that means you can go ahead to our website and see that August video because it will have already come out.
All right, Mike, I'm good now.
Okay.
That's Drew Tignanelli saying God bless.